In 1025 AD, the land we now call Germany was a sprawling expanse of suffocating shadows known as the Holy Roman Empire. But the law of the emperor did not reach the heart of the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest. In this primordial wilderness, the trees were so thick they choked the sunlight, and the ground was perpetually damp with the smell of old graves. The village of Todstein Stone existed in a state of permanent siege. It was surrounded by high wooden palisades, reinforced with rusted iron and blessed salt. These walls were not built to keep out marauding armies or rival lords. They were built to keep out the Nachtiger night hunters. The Nachtiger were not mere beasts. They were the remnants of a forgotten pagan era, tall, gaunt entities with skin like wet parchment and fingers that ended in foot-long serrated bone blades. They had no eyes. Instead, they had oversized, pulsing nostrils that could smell the adrenaline of a frightened child from miles away. When they spoke, it sounded like the grinding of stones over a fresh corpse. On a night when the moon was eclipsed by blood, red clouds, and the wind screamed like a banshee, a child was born in the cellar of a dilapidated hut in Todstein. His name was Elias. His birth was an omen of ruin. As he took his first breath, the holy water in the village chapel turned into black bile. The midwife shrieked and fled into the night because Elias was not born alone. Attached to his spine, fused into his very vertebrae, was a pulsating obsidian, colored growth that resembled a heavy, rusted chain. It wasn't metal, it was living tissue, cold as the grave and dark as the abyss. His mother, Greta, hid him in the shadows for 10 years. She fed him raw meat and kept him away from the sun, for Elias's skin would blister under God's light, and his eyes, the color of burning embers, terrified even the hardiest of men. The villagers of Todstein survived through a horrific pact. Every decade, the tithes of the forest were demanded. The Nachtiger would cease their slaughter if the village sacrificed a child born under an eclipse. Elias was the only choice. The village elders dragged Elias from his mother's weeping arms. They bound him in iron manacles and marched him deep into the forest, to the altar of the shattered ribs. They left him there, a 10-year-old boy chained to a stone, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest began to breathe. As the darkness became absolute, the sibilant whispers began. Hundreds of Nachtiger emerged from the trees, their clicking claws creating a rhythmic, terrifying sound. Their leader, a creature whose jaw hung open to its chest, stepped forward to claim the prize. As the monster's claws sank into Elias's shoulder, the boy didn't scream. Instead, a low, guttural vibration shook the earth. The obsidian mark on his back erupted. The living chain, fused to his spine, lashed out like a whip of dark energy. It shattered the iron manacles into dust. Elias's body began to contort. His bones cracked and elongated. His muscles swelled with unnatural power, and his fingernails sharpened into obsidian daggers. He was no longer a victim. He was a creature, Shatten's shadow warrior. That night, for the first time in 1,000 years, the forest ran red with the ichor of monsters. Elias slaughtered every Nachtiger in the clearing, using the chain on his back to rip their heads from their withered necks. He ate their hearts to sustain his new form. He did not return to the village. He became the forest's new nightmare. For 10 years, Elias lived in the bowels of the Black Forest. He became a legend, a ghost that hunted the hunters. He refined his horrific powers, which grew as he consumed the blood of his enemies. 1. Shatten, Shrit Shadow, Step. He could dissolve into a puddle of ink and reappear behind his prey. 2. Ossuary Blades. He could project his own ribcage outward to act as a set of serrated spears. 3. The Black Chain Lash, his primary weapon, the living chain, could grow to 30 feet, capable of slicing through stone and soul alike. He learned that the Nachtiger were merely the foot soldiers. The true master was the König der Schatten, the Shadow King, an ancient deity of rot who lived in a castle made of human skulls at the highest peak of the Harz Mountains. The Shadow King, enraged by the loss of his brood, gathered an army of 10,000 horrors. Werewolves with fur made of needles, headless riders on skeletal steeds, and the Nachtiger elite marched toward Todstein. The villagers gathered in the town square, clutching broken crosses and dull axes. The gates were splinters. The monsters were pouring in, their mouths watering for the feast. Then, the sky turned black. A single figure stood atop the village wall. Elias, he was 7 feet tall, draped in the pelts of monsters he had slain. His eyes were twin furnaces of hate. With a roar that silenced the army, he descended. He moved like a whirlwind of blades. The living chain on his back moved with a mind of its own, decapitating 3 monsters with every swing. The Shadow King himself arrived, a 20-foot tall mass of shifting darkness and screaming faces. Every person he had ever eaten shrieked from within his translucent skin. "You are my son, Elias," the king bellowed, his voice causing the stone buildings to crumble. "I put that chain in your marrow. You are the bridge for my return. Then I shall burn the bridge." Elias hissed. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. The ground of Todstein was turned into a swamp of blood. Elias was broken, his ribs crushed, one eye gouged out. But as the Shadow King leaned in for the kill, Elias reached into his own back. He didn't just use the chain, he ripped his entire spine, the source of the black chain, out of his body. Using his own soul as the conduit, he plunged the spinal chain into the Shadow King's core. A supernova of dark energy exploded. The army of monsters dissolved into ash. The Shadow King was pulled into the void, screaming as he was unmade. When the sun rose, Elias stood in the ruins of the village. He was dying, his body a map of scars and gore. The villagers he had saved emerged from their cellars. They didn't cheer, they didn't embrace him. They saw a monster. To them, Elias was more terrifying than the Shadow King, because he looked like a man, but fought like a demon. They picked up stones and threw them at their savior, chanting, "Demon, abomination, go back to the dark." Elias looked at them with his one remaining red eye. He felt no anger, only a profound, cold loneliness. He turned and walked back into the black forest, his blood leaving a trail that would never wash away. Today, 1,000 years later, the village of Todstein is gone, buried under layers of moss and thyme. But hikers in Germany's deep forests still report hearing the sound of a heavy chain dragging over dead leaves. They say that Elias is still there, immortal and cursed, waiting in the shadows. He is the guardian who gave up his humanity to save a world that hates him, the eternal predator of the Black Forest.